I've noticed that the pages from other scrapbookers who inspire me tend to include more embellishments than I put on my pages. Not too much, but a bit more. But when I start to add more embellishments to my own pages, I'm not sure where to put things, and I worry about things like trapped white space. I think I'm supposed to avoid it, but I don't really know what it truly is, or why it's a problem. Glitter Girl, can you help?
Of course I can. I'm going to start this with a really simple composition just so that I have something on the page to get it all started so that we can start looking at how things come together and how space can be open or trapped and useful or not useful, all those sorts of things. So this is the green grid, and I've cut it so that it's in a big tall box but is wider than the photo. And I'm going to put that over here on the right hand side of the page so that he is pointing into the page. I'm not going to attach that just yet because I want to put a couple more layers down. Now, that vellum that's gorgeous, but oh my goodness, I don't really want to use the whole sheet here. I want to be able to spread it across lots of different pages and have it be extra special. So that's going to go all the way to the top here. And I'm just putting adhesive there where I know I can cover it up easily. And this one I haven't cut down yet, but I want to make it a little box behind the photo. And this one I'm just going to cut with my scissors. And I'm using gray ink today. Peel that back off. I thought about not using ink on this one, but I think actually, because I think there might end up some black accents, kind of black and white things in the end, and I thought the gray might help everything and just have a little bit more in common, so the black and white doesn't become really, really, really stark or anything. Okay, I'm going to bring that back over to the right a little bit. Okay. And large pieces, I think, I know I pointed to this blue camera, but I picked up the blue, love this, because I like that this is a square because I've got a square photo, and I think having two large pieces that are both that same color is just going to be too much for this layout. And so I'm going to keep this one. And here, like, I've got that black and white, so I'm going to soften this edge with the gray. So I'm thinking that I want to separate the white from this pattern and the white from this pattern. And that I want to move over here a little bit maybe. Okay. So here's where I can start to look at the idea of trap space. So I'm going to go ahead and put this down for the sake of working on this. Now, you'll notice I didn't actually stick that, because here's my first example. Right now, I don't have a problem with trap space because this edge here is framed. It's open all the way around here. And what I'm looking for is when a space gets locked in the middle and I end up with this empty, contained piece that's somewhere in the middle and it's like it's been forgotten or everything else has been shoved up next to it. And then you have this kind of empty space. Like if you imagine that you had all these things and you needed to cram as much into this tiny little box as possible, but what you didn't realize was that one of them was a shoebox with the lid on. And sensible you would open the shoebox and put other stuff inside if the object was to cram as much stuff inside. But you haven't done that. You've put the lid on and you're trying to cram all these things inside this space, and yet what you actually have is this box with trapped air inside that's not helping you, okay? So that's not, it doesn't literally work that way because I don't need to cram as much onto the page as possible. But the concept of not realizing that I've left this big open bubble trapped inside and I can't get to it, that part does work. So here is not a problem really, because I have framing. And this is a choice. You can do this. You can have this. It's a margin. Yeah, you could have this frame around the edge. But if I'm then going to come in and put this here, okay, still not horrible. This has a way out. This has a way out. Okay, if I do this, if I put this up so that this is overlapped here, and I put this here, now I have a problem. See my shoebox? My shoebox is there. And it's got this open space, and I haven't done anything with it. Okay, so that is the kind of space that I'm trying to avoid. What I'm going to do is to overlap this, and I am going to make a spot that has trap space. Watch. It's not going to be there for very long. Okay? So, right now, this space is probably, some of you are going, but there's that big bit there. And if I move this up here, now, technically it has a way out. It has a way out. But I can understand your pain if you're thinking it doesn't feel great. I understand that. Okay, this one, I'm looking here. I want this inside that gap. Okay. So I could put it there. What I'm actually thinking now is that I could separate it and put it here. But now I'm going to end up with a whole bunch of space here that's easy to get trapped. So working with the layers that I already have down on the page, I find to be helpful. So this is one step along my process. I'm actually realizing there that I've got quite a big margin around the text on this box. I don't really need it to be a whole square. I like the idea that it is a square because that photo is a square. But I could actually make it a little bit more of an oblong rectangle. Just a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to put that there. Now, this is a space where it's arguable whether it's trapped or not. Technically, this has a way out, but it does feel a little awkward. Yeah. And I could do something like, I could bring this up, and if I put this underneath here, especially if I don't have a gap here in the middle, you know, that gets rid of that awkward space. But it does make things a little cramped, and I'd like a little bit more breathing room with the writing. So what I'm going to do is how I eliminate spots like that, and that's to go ahead and create the spot, but then to find something to put in it. So somewhere here I have that, and I'll strip, here it is. Yeah, I have this, but that's a lot of that blue next to each other, so I think I'll save that for something else. And have a look at other things. Just check. I'm leaning toward this, but I just want to double check that there's nothing else in here that would be even more perfect. I know my rule is that when I see something that's going to work, go with it, but I think you're allowed to go through the pages of the sticker book just in case. Okay, I'm going to go with this one, but I'm going to cut this down so that it's just this piece. I'll put the rest back in the book. Okay, so that can stay for later. And this can come up and get rid of that space. Now, how do I want this spaced? Here's why you see me do a lot of taking layers apart, because I don't always have a master plan before I start sticking things down. I know some people prefer to have things figured out before anything has adhesive, but I find that if I work with that method, I often just forget where things were going when I'm in the process of adding the adhesive. Okay, so what I'm looking for is getting this white all the way over to the vellum. And now look! I do not have that awkward gap there anymore. And I don't have an awkward gap here. Putting the journaling in place helps me to figure out where things should go, and turned out that when I got to the end of here I did need a little bit more room. So I looked at the smaller journaling boxes, and actually it would have fit well in this one too, but I didn't really want to go with this subtitle, so I've gone with the red, because the other thought I was thinking, since I just said there's so much green here, is that I need a third color to add in some contrast. So I'm going to add in this red and see how that kind of opens up the possibility of what will mix and match in this part of the page. Now I need to kind of make this continue going down the page so it makes sense. I could put it here, but see if the lines end up lining up, then I'm worried that it wouldn't read nicely as a column. So I think the better idea is for me to tuck it here, and it does mean it's going to run off the page, but so is the vellum, so that's okay. And the vellum goes right to the edge. Okay, and now I've got a spot here, which technically isn't trapped. Look, it's open, but it does end up with this kind of awkward little divot, where you get a corner here that's not hugely pleasing. So that's now where I'm going to start for my embellishment. I'm just going to have a look through this sticker book to see if there's anything that just jumps out at me straight away, especially keeping in mind that I've now added in the red. So I'm looking at things that are blue, green, or red. I could do the date in here. I'm not so sure. Okay, I do also want to add in some title letters to bring the composition out this way, and I think where I've picked up on this black and white, that would be a good option to follow through with the letters. So I'm going to go with some black and white stickers. These are from Dear Lizzie. And I'm just going to place them lightly so that I can figure out the spacing of the title. Now, there is now a tool for thickers where you can do this on a straight or curved angle. Or you can use a ruler, clear ruler, a bit of plastic packaging, whatever it is that you want to use to hold it and move it around. But I just find that I get better results this way. So this is how I do it. Okay, so I think that's going to work out fine for the spacing. And then I'm going to add in the second word of the title with these stickers. Some good old classic sassafras letters, and I needed plenty because I'm going to use the word everywhere, which has far too many E's. You could just really wipe out a set of stickers from the beginning, so flat letter stickers are a better option here. Here's why I don't push them down. So now I do have some awkward spacing here. It's not horrible, but to me this is the size of a gap where I'd rather it either come down and rest on that horizontal or go up a little bit more so it's obvious that there's a gap. To me, this is the size of gap that says, you got the spacing wrong, you were aiming for somewhere else and you did not get it. And yes, that is the voice that the inner critic inside my head, that's what she sounds like. She's kind of whiny. Okay, and so what I'm going to do is move it all down. And this is why I can totally see why using a tool or using that concept of using the packaging or the clear ruler can totally work. And yet every time I try, it just doesn't feel natural to me and I get frustrated, so I go back to this. But all I'm going to do is move all of this down so that it's just balanced a little bit there. Here's a great case of how technical and obsessed with trap space do you want to get. This N has overlapped this H, and it does mean that now I have this space in here between the ascender and the H and the end of this pattern paper. And if your eye went straight to that, then you should avoid that type of technique. Most people won't, that won't glare at them, but it might for you. The reason it won't glare when it's lettering has to do with the way that we get in a habit of writing by hand in a notebook, like when we're at school. And we know that ascenders will go up and descenders will come down, and sometimes they will touch. But ascenders are like this part of the H goes up, and this is a descender. Yeah. Now, most people will just be okay with that. However, we all have our little things that set us off. And some people do get set off by when one letter touches another. And if that is you, then you need to avoid that. If it's not you, then you don't have to worry about it. Yeah? Okay, so I do have my shot of red here. I've got a shot of red here. So you know I'm going to want to put red somewhere else on this page. And I do have this little space. It's not completely beautiful yet, but that's not where my red needs to go. My red needs to go somewhere maybe up here so that it's spread out and frames the photo nicely. But something else probably should go here, and it will probably soften the look and make it a little bit more pleasing. I'm going to start this little area of embellishment here with some retro supplies. So I've pulled out some old rub-ons from KI Memories, my precious stack of sassafras stickers, and I've got also some chipboard stickers from Heidi Grace, and these KI Memories stickers from long ago that I just thought would be nice contrast on top to add a little bit of black scriptiness to that. Okay, so I'm going to start with rub-ons so that I can have some things in the background. These have been sat in my stash for at least 10 years, so it is time to just use them. So I'm going to be pretty brutal. I'm going to say I'm going to use all of these. I'm going to cut them apart so it's nice and easy to use them. I have tested one from the sheet on a little scrap because these are so old I wasn't sure if they would work, and they worked just fine. So onto this page they will go. So I'm going to scatter them around and see where's best, and then I'm going to build some other embellishment around with them. Okay, so what I want to do is make sure that I'm placing things gently so that I'm not accidentally getting them stuck. I think that one's going to be too big for there, so this big one is going to need to come down here. Is this one the same size? Yeah. But this one will be a good size up here. Could have those two up there. Whoop. And that leaves me with 3 that I could bring over near the title, I think. Into this. So this is going to be the biggest area of embellishment. This one will be small and compact, and this one will just be a little bit here and a little bit here that we'll read as one with the title in the middle. Okay, so that's all my rub-on hearts, all the rub-on hearts given a spot. I know that I want to have a splash of red up here. I do have a big blue and red heart, but it's just not a good match for what all the other things that I've put on there, so I'm going to leave that one for now. Was that square that I was thinking might work well? We'll see. These are really sticky, so can I cut it out with the backing? I can. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Okay, so I can use this one up here. and see if that's going to be too boxy. It might. We'll see. It also might help because I've got a square here, a square there. I could have a square there. And I need some larger element in here. I've pulled out some that you wouldn't necessarily think, even the Christmas, because now I have greens. So things like this green heart, when you take it away from this sheet, you wouldn't know that that was from a Christmas collection. This little green flower might come in useful. And I think it's this cloud that is really speaking to me for this space here. It's me something that's not another square, so that I can have a bit of variety while still emphasizing that square shape. But how am I going to make it work? Okay. So it's going to work nicely if I bring it to here, except, what have I got here? Now I've definitely got trapped space there. So that's where I'm going to build the other layers here. So I'm going to bring this one here. And I'm making the choice to have this line come along the edge of the sticker and not do that, where I end up with this trapped space inside. If I put it here, the spacing is just a bit more pleasant. Now, when you get into this bit where you're layering all these embellishments, don't feel like it's an absolute black and white rule. When you're piling on embellishment, a little bit or a lot, there isn't a hard and fast rule. It is definitely a case of looking at everything and making it work. So what you like and what you have on your page. So don't panic too much, but it can help if you're stuck and wondering, why does this embellishment not look the way I imagined in my head? Yeah. Okay, getting lots of layers here, so I want to start adding some dimension. And I'm going to be working with this space that I've created that I want to cover, so I still need a little bit behind there, so I won't press that down too hard in case I need to take it up again. I need like a little strip or something. I still have this little strip, but that's then the blue against the blue, and that doesn't make it quite so lovely. Let's see. Anything from these are the ones that I'd already started cutting up. Anything here that might, there's a green with black polka dot. Some of that blue there. It has the green in it. Admittedly, it also has pink and yellow. But you're only going to see this tiny little bit, and there's actually a bit of yellow in that sticker there. I think it might work. So now, that's still an item that is trapped in there, but because you don't see the rest of it over here, then it just, to me, that reads a little bit better. Now, this is why I say don't get obsessed about hard and fast rules, because that's a really iffy one, okay? But I find that then if I'm adding more and more things here, then that can just be a balance that makes your eye not go to that space. If your eye didn't go to that space in the first place, then you don't really need to worry about it anyway. And I'm going to add this sticker over the top, but it's not all going to fit. I'm just going to add word and a little bit of tail until it runs off the page. Oh, and I remember now why I love these, but why I didn't use very many, because they are very delicate and fiddly. Okay. They're so cute though. Okay, so line up the top. Well, I'm trying to line up the top, which is actually the midline of the letter, so the top of the lowercase a and p there, or the middle of that H. Now, actually, I wish I had cut this over to there. I have a feeling I can't pull it back up, though. Yeah, I'm not going to risk it. So, is this the best spacing ever on that edge? No. And then, just take this edge off here. Oops. Don't turn over. And put my green heart back over here. Here's a place where it really starts to get confusing in as much as, is this a rule or what? And this is why design principles are just guidelines to help you, and you should always let your intention override. So here, I've got all sorts of lines happening inside of this. So I've got a box there that can't get out. I've got a box here that can't get out. But what I wanted to do with this outline rub-on was to emphasize that there are layers there. So it's intention over the actual application in each instance. So it might be that, it might not end up perfect. You might not like this, and you might say, oh, I really wish you would have kept it all on one piece of paper. But by looking at it on my layout, then you can see where your eye goes and what you like and what you dislike. Okay. I think these are going to be the simpler ones, so I'm going to go ahead and put these on next and then build that one at the top. And see, this time I'm trying to make sure I don't get I don't get a layer stuck inside there, because I want this to fade in behind the title, but I don't want it to draw more attention to those layers in this spot on the page than to the title. Down here, there's nothing for it to compete with. Also, keep in mind that you don't have to be that concerned with your intention of every single embellishment that goes on the page. It is absolutely fine for your intention to be, for this thing that I put right here, to look cute. That's a fine intention. What I'm liking up here is that I like the red square, but this heart is just too different to the ones that I'm using on the page elsewhere. So I'm going to turn it around and end up covering up this heart, so that my emphasis is on the red chipboard square rather than that heart shape. To bring the green in, I can bring in that green sassafras flower to cover the red, cover the little white heart that doesn't really suit. And now I am a little torn as to what I'm going to do with these. Actually, now that I see it like that, I'm going to take the pop dots off. So my thought was that I would add the dimension, because I put the dimension on the green element down here, so it would be nice and complementary. But, of course, I can't really add the rub-on over the top of a pop dot and the flat. And I can still have this sticker go over that edge and have the heart layered on top. So at the moment, all the embellishment here is contained in the red square, and barring this little bit of the flower that comes off the edge. And then I have two more. I've got a solid heart that's quite heavy for there. I think what I'd like to do is have this lighter heart up around this corner. That's going to echo what I did with the lighter heart down here. Looking at the tiny little pieces in these stickers to see if I can bring something in. I've got a little bit of black and white there. That could be useful. Those, all the hearts on that one are going to be the wrong shape. This little blue heart. And that's where I can add my dimension. So I'll take this tiny little blue heart. Okay. And I think to make this kind of coordinate a little bit more with this, I can use the tail of that sticker from here. Just looking at how much of it do I want. Do I want to actually move it all the way around to there? That's quite pretty. Yeah, okay. Do it that way. This makes the spacing nicer with the loops, but takes the tail right through the middle of that heart. That's what I'm going to go with. It's stuck now. I thought I might add just this tiny little bit left. Do I want to put it under the title here? Here. I wish I had just enough, just a little bit more curve so that you could tell it wasn't meant to be straight. Not sure that I can force it to have more curve. Actually, maybe you can. Yeah, now it definitely doesn't look like it was meant to be straight. Okay, so now I have that going through all three embellishment groups. How can I make this one look a little bit more in tune with these? Well, I think it's going to come in the smaller things that I add to finish the embellishments off. So I've still got this one handy that can come into play, but I need some smaller pieces. I also know I do have a little bit of trap space here. Speaking of which, so the way I place these, I do end up with these little spots here. Is it right or wrong? It's not that sort of question. So it's always going to be a case of what is most favorable to your eye. And so you might have liked the loops so that they were up a little bit more, so that you ended up with this line in the middle of the loop. And that I don't particularly love. I'm okay with the line coming through this spot where each loop closes. And that's just... I still have space here, so it's not perfect, but it still works to me, and it gives me that little bit of fluidity. likewise down here, it doesn't work out perfectly either. So that's okay. Don't panic about trap space. Don't let it get to be something that paralyzes your thought process. Okay. I actually quite like that word up there. And I can frame this by just adding the E in the corner of that little flower there. And so I have the cloud down here, and I was thinking maybe do I add another cloud? Okay, I'll add a cloud down here. So then I have the option of, I could just use like the heart shape. The cloud here is going to be too big. I could use a heart, or I could mimic it and put the cloud here. It's quite a big cloud. But because it's clear, you'd be able to see that rub-on through. I'm going to go for it. I did say at the beginning that I was going to use more rather than less when it came to embellishment today. So that's what I'm going to do. There it is. With those white ones dotted around, then the only space that I'm left feeling is a little bit empty in the middle is here. And this spot is a good illustration of what I think of when I think of the term trapped white space. It's how I learned it, but I didn't learn it as a scrapbooker. I learned it in a different format, and that was to look at the front page of a newspaper, that way that everything is done in columns, and maybe if you have a big photo or a big headline, it's going to run over several columns, but then you're going to have all these things, and there's no big gaps in the middle. That's how I learned about trapped white spaces, that if you were to take a newspaper and leave something out, like if you accidentally forgot to put in a headline, you would know as soon as you looked at it that something was wrong, because there'd be a big gap trapped in the middle. And so that's how I always, I learned about a trapped white space and how it kind of translates in my head. And this is a good example of that, because it looks like I have a headline here with my columns here, and I have a headline here with columns here, but I've got this spot in the middle where I've forgotten to put something. So I'm going to use that one remaining rub-on to start something to go in this space. Now I could have overlapped that rub-on onto the top. To be honest, my worry was because it's a solid one and because this is not absolutely flush here where I've got different layers of things, I was worried that it would break. And with a more delicate one, like an outline, if it breaks, you don't notice it as much as you would with a solid one. There would be a big ugly line there that just wouldn't work so well. But then I want to add in some smaller details. Don't particularly want to bring in the enamel dots here because I've used them in these three groupings, and this grouping is going to be different. So I want to look at different options. And so I'm going to think maybe of some tiny stamps, and maybe something that works like an enamel dot but has something different, like a rhinestone or something with a bit more sparkle. Starting with this just small set of tiny word stamps, and I'm going to try the gray ink that I was using for the edges, since I have so much black and white there and I don't want this to be quite as bold. So we're going to stamp first there, and just going to repeat that idea of stamping it a little softly here so that it fades down that way. Once more, stamping the excess off there. And I like the idea maybe come up here, have it once there. And over here. Yeah. Now, remember, stop when you feel it's finished. This might feel like too much to you, and then that's fine. Step it back. Likewise, it might feel like not enough to you. Then keep going, okay? Definitely room for individual style here. Okay, I'm going to just add little white puffy hearts to this little center bit here. So have a look at this point and see if there are spots that bother you in terms of have I left any gaps that feel trapped. Now there's still a little bit of space here. There's a balance to be had. I could fill this space, I could fill every little last tiny bit. That ink is not sticking on top of that rub-on, so I'm just going to take it off there. You can fill and fill and fill and fill and fill, but there's also to be said something for breathing room. So I like having this little bit of top margin here so that you know where the journaling starts and things like that. I like that this last bit of the journaling ended up a little bit more spacious than this writing because this is kind of the important summary at the end. This is the catch line, the catchphrase. Yeah, and I like that although there's lots of detail here, this big expanse of space is open. And that's something that we didn't talk about today, is that white space does not need to be white. It just means white in terms of you haven't added more stuff on top. So if you're working with a white sheet of cardstock as your background, then yes, the white space will probably be white. But in this case, I would still talk about trapped white space, and it would be this. But see, this is nice open space. This is not trapped, and it gives my big area of lots of detail plenty of space to breathe. And that is important to me. And I tell you, the thing that I really enjoy about having pages where there are areas of lots of embellishments but then lots of breathing room is how it all comes together in an album. Because as I turn the pages, it's nice to have that little break between whatever is here or here. But I still like all these details because I like to sit and look at the page and look at all those little things. And sometimes I look at it for a long time, and sometimes I look at it really quickly, and that's okay. Yeah, so make sure that you are actually enjoying the pages you make, and that definitely overrides anything I could give you about trapped white space. But I hope that idea gives you a little bit of help if it is something that is bothering you. If it's not something that's bothering you, please don't let it become something that that is bothering you. It's not that big a deal. But if it is something that when you're adding the embellishment, you're going, why does this look a little awkward to me? Look for that. Look to see if there's a space that's somehow stuck in the middle, if there's a gap in a strange place that you could maybe extend, let breathe, or add more things so that that space doesn't end up that big shoebox taking up all your real estate with just air. Okay, thanks so much for hearing me out on all of that. I hope you enjoy, and I'll see you again next week. If there are questions that you would like to pose to Glitter Girl, please be sure to leave them in the comments. And if you want to see more videos, please subscribe and give it a thumbs up, that sort of thing. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you soon.